Hi, I'm John Feldt. You know, last week some parts of the nation received quite a bit of rain, mainly the Pacific Northwest and parts of Northern California. Most of the nation, though, was quite dry once again, with parts of Texas and surrounding states not receiving any rain for the last several weeks, if not the last month. About 71% of the nation is currently in drought, which hasn't changed a whole lot over the last 3 months. Looking at the eastern part of the U.S., some areas have received a welcome and needed rainfall, other areas not much at all. Now I'm going to be discussing the Arctic Oscillation that has moved into a negative phase and what that might mean for enhanced precipitation, both in the form of rain or snow. Stay tuned. Here's the rain around the nation last week, rain and snow. Areas in red received the most rain, 5 inches or more, and that remains that very active Pacific Northwest and Northern California and higher elevations regions. We do see some splotches of yellow, and that's more moderate rain, an inch or so. But for the most part, it's been another quiet week with large parts of the nation receiving no rain whatsoever. In fact, this region right here, once again, no rain, and that's been several weeks that parts of this area, if not several months, have not received any rainfall. Another region pretty dry is the southeast U.S. Florida, not a whole lot of rain, and about the only area that's been somewhat active has been this band right here from Louisiana up into the Tennessee Valley region. As far as the percent of normal rainfall for the last 7 days, you can see widespread areas of below normal rainfall. But we are seeing some pockets of above normal rainfall. That's at blue and purple. So that's been a bit of a change, especially over the northern plains, North and South Dakota, patches of above normal rainfall. And that area has been very dry. So that might make some improvement in the drought, probably most likely very modest in that region. Stream flow, let's review that quickly. What we see are the browns and the reds are below normal stream flow. Green is normal and blue is above normal. Pacific Northwest and parts of California that have been receiving enhanced rainfall over the last month or so are experiencing above normal stream flow. We do see areas of below normal stream flow over a broad section of the Midwest and also the southeast U.S. Now, the area that's been expanding the most has been the southeast U.S. There's been a significant expansion into the southern part of Alabama, as well as most of South Carolina and now parts of North Carolina and Virginia. And that's been some recent expansion. The drought's been very much anchored over Georgia, but it is expanding more significantly in that area, primarily due to the warm weather in that region. So what we see here is a review of the drought monitor. Now, this time of the year, you wouldn't expect a whole lot of change. Right now, the part of the country in some degree of drought is near 70%. It's 69.63%. Last week was 71.19. So that's really no change from a national perspective as far as the extent of the drought. D3 and D4, the red area, the more significant drought, about 17.25%. Again, not a whole lot of change. So we do see a large part of the nation in not only any degree of drought, but more significant drought, and we don't see a whole lot of change over the last week. As far as the soil moisture percentiles, this is a comparison to this period of the year, a weekly average. So it gives you some idea of the areas that soil moisture is increasing or decreasing. Blues are areas of increase in soil moisture, so more significant increases over parts of Northern California. And then splotchy areas of decreases over the southeast U.S., mid-Atlantic, and even the northeast U.S. Like I mentioned, this is primarily due to above normal temperatures. We normally would see slow changes to the decreases in winter months, more significant increases upon rainfall or precipitation. That's why we see enhanced blue because of the heavy rain in that area. Now, I've mentioned about the Arctic Oscillation for the last couple of weeks. As we get into winter months, the overall teleconnections will play an important role. And last week, I mentioned that the Arctic Oscillation had moved up towards neutral, forecast to go back into a negative phase, and it is now strongly negative, and forecast to generally remain some degree of a negative phase as we get into most of the rest of the month of December. So a couple quick thoughts about this. First of all, when you have this imbalance, a negative phase of the Arctic Oscillation, cold air tends to spill south. Usually it tends to move over the north central and northeast U.S. and parts of the eastern U.S., Ohio Valley and such. This episode looks like it's going to be more in the central part of the country and actually parts of even the west. So it is a bit further west than I would normally expect. There's also can be a lag between when you go into a negative phase and when the air actually spills south. And that's what we're seeing. And also keep in mind, this doesn't mean that there's going to be a large dome of Arctic air. There'll be individual pulses of Arctic air that will be sliding to the south. So here's the big picture. We have this low up in Canada, and that's been dominating the picture for quite some time. What we see here is we're going to have a rotation around this low, and occasionally we'll have a dip, and with each one of these dips, more cold air will sag to the south. Blue is the early week jet stream, and yellow is later in the week. And you can see that dip is more over the central part of the country. So we're going to have alternating pockets of cool air sinking south and then moderating back to the north. Now, over the southeast U.S. and the east U.S., as this dips to the south, it very much could have a response that it bulges over this region here of the southeast and mid-Atlantic, and that'll actually keep temperatures warmer in that region. Now, where rainfall is likely to occur over the next week is going to be in two regions. One in the Pacific Northwest, not nearly what we've seen in the last couple weeks, or if not the last couple months, but we also expect where we have these temperature differences, and this is image showing the temperatures. Blue are colder or cooler, and yellow and red are warmer. And right where we have this, very strong boundary here from cold to warm, that is usually where we have these thermal boundaries, where there'll be a frontal boundary, and that's where we expect enhanced precipitation in this region along those boundaries. So here's the trends and threats for the upcoming week. Pacific Northwest, another inch or so of rain, much less than the last couple of weeks, but still fairly wet. Also parts of the southwest U.S., a little bit more rain than what we've seen over parts of Southern California and Arizona. But that pocket of well below normal precipitation will continue over areas from Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma into Texas and Colorado and that region. Once again, another week looks like 25% of normal. Significant snow in the colder air, that's in the blue dashed line. And then in that arrow is along the thermal gradient, about 0.25 to 1.5 inches. And I want to mention also that east of there, I did not outline it in enhanced rainfall, but there will be some precipitation over areas to the east across the Carolinas and Georgia, and that'll be very welcome. But right now it looks like a modest type rainfall event, probably at the best getting up into the normal range for the week. I wouldn't be surprised if it averages, even though there is some rain, below normal once again for that region. Now, if we look at the outlook, this is a medium range model, and medium range models, this particular model goes to 168 hours, roughly through the middle part of December. And you can see the major trends here. It's going to be a fairly quiet type pattern. We have more modest precipitation in the Pacific Northwest. We have the axis that comes in the Gulf Coast and then through the Tennessee Valley and up into the northeast U.S., but the rainfall amounts are relatively modest. I don't think this is going to be anything where it's going to be a very significant or heavy or repeated rain event, but more modest. And there's going to be a very well-defined boundary to the west and to the southeast, where very dry, again, over the central part of the country, and fairly dry over parts of the southeast U.S. and northern Florida. I guess the good news here is that there's a possibility of maybe a little bit more rain in this region here that could use it, as well as parts of the upper Midwest. But again, I'm not real excited about that being all that significant. So the takeaway for this week's weekly water outlook: dry areas generally will be remaining dry. There'll be alternating pulses of cold air pushing in to the north central and the parts of the western U.S. with the negative phase of the AO. There'll be a narrow band of enhanced precipitation that will result in modest rain over parts of the southeast U.S., Arizona, and California. Looks like a quiet week. I will be updating this again next week. Thank you.